It's time for Talkin Tauntauns.
Star Wars discussion podcast, from reviews of the latest shows and books to breaking news and thoughtful interviews. Join us as we dive into all things from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Talkin Tauntauns. I am Jim Lahane. Joining me today is a very special guest, and I will give her our intro, special guest intro music. If I can find it, there it is. If I could spell, would be a better thing.
We would be honored if you would join us.
So our special guest today is a Hugo and Eisner. I said that right. Eisner nominated New York Times best-selling author who also happens to be a paleontologist. We don't want to sweep that under the rug, but she has worked on many comics series, including obviously Star Wars, which is why you're here. But you also said you're working on Sabrina the Teenage Witch currently, Blood Type currently. You've also worked on, you worked on a lot of stuff. I was just looking at your website. I think Alien was on there, and I think Terminator.
The Expanse.
The Expanse. Lots of different comic lines. But it's Corinna Bechko.
Yes, rhymes with gecko. I'm very proud of that part.
So, how are you doing?
Great. Thank you for having me on.
Yes, no. As I was saying before we started recording, I had heard you were at the Legacy Con, which is a special con. It does move around because I remember the year before, I think it was in Texas, and this year it was in California.
Yeah, it was definitely, I've been to it twice, and both times it was in Burbank here.
Okay, maybe it doesn't move around. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with another con.
But, I could also have, what is time? What is space?
Time's a soup.
Yes.
So, but you were on there with a couple of friends of mine and of the show, Abel Pena, who has been on the show a few times, and he had, I believe, told me that I needed to reach out to you.
Thank you.
Gabe Santos had mentioned that you guys know each other, and James Floyd, and so I'm like, all right. So I friended you on, or followed you on Instagram, and then just recently I'm like, okay, I think I'm in a place where I could ask to see if you want to come on the show, and you very graciously accepted.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on. It's all things that I love to talk about, so how could I refuse?
It's Star Wars and dinosaurs.
Can't go wrong.
So I guess I'll start with the dinosaur topic so we can get into the Star Wars in a little bit. But you are a fossil librarian, you had said, for the Natural History Museum in
Yeah,
Los Angeles.
that's right. I know that Gabe refers to himself, or has in the past, like this. I know a number of people. I did not coin this, but it's a very accurate description for when talking to people about what you do in collections. Because if you say, "Oh, I work in collections at a museum," everybody goes, "Ugh." But if you say librarian, they understand that you're working with how to file away things, how to keep the data straight, how to find things, which I happen to work right now with invertebrate paleontology. And unlike in the Dinosaur Institute, where I also spend some time, where we have fewer very large specimens, in invert, we have many little bitty things. So it's an offsite collection space. It's basically in a warehouse district. It's huge. There's just cabinets. We were very excited. We just got 5 new giant cabinets so we could have some new space to file things. And I love it. A lot of people, I understand, find this kind of work a little fiddly, but I love it. I find it very satisfying to slot everything in correctly and make sure the data is correct and make sure people can find them and do their interesting research projects with them.
As someone who works as a data scientist, good data is hard to find.
Yes, and it's so easy to um, just through inattention allow it to go rogue or bad. So making sure that doesn't happen, I found very satisfying.
So, does that tie in at all to your work in Star Wars or writing in general? I guess because you're not only Star Wars, but you are a rather prolific comic writer in general.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's funny. It's always been kind of two tracks. I have a zoology degree, is where my background is, but I've also written for, well, for a really long time since I was a kid. And eventually I started getting published. And it's a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy. I'm a big nerd in that way, so it fits right in. But yeah, I find that they inform each other a lot
Mhm.
because I'm often thinking about extinct ecosystems and how the world worked and these kind of things. And it's actually really useful for world building, especially for science fiction.
I I get the same vibe because I use my science background to inform other things that I like to work on because I know a lot about geology. So it's well that's useful to even just the data science. If I have nothing to do with geology, I have that background. And so I could see just having that information there is useful to do other things with.
Well, exactly. And I find it's a lot of science fiction tends to be very, when it's hard science fiction, it tends to be very tech oriented. And I like to bring the more squishy, biologically oriented science to the fore. So I think about that a lot. And when writing Star Wars, I thought a lot about the creatures and the worlds and how these things could actually work. And no different for something that's more hard sci-fi, like writing The Expanse. I was still thinking about the exact same things. Like, what happens when you don't have that gravity? And what about animals that aren't humans? And how do they interact? And what would happen if you didn't have the full complement? All of those things, I feel like they feed in.
So how give me a little bit background on your Star Wars, not the Star Wars writing, but just your personal experience with Star Wars. How did you, are you a Star, I assume you're a Star Wars fan.
Oh, yes.
Otherwise you wouldn't be here. How did you get into Star Wars in the first place?
I'm gonna tell on myself age-wise, but I did see the original very first movie in the theater as a little kid. I wasn't old enough to see it the first time it came around in theaters. I only heard people talking about it, and I have very early memories of why can't I go see this? So I was very excited when they re-released it when it came back around because it had been such a phenomenon, and I was able to see it then. So my earliest memory of it is having arguments with other little girls about how it was not cool that Luke and Leia should be a couple. I thought that she belonged with the obvious other choice. So
Chewbacca.
exactly, exactly. I actually did one time doing a convention. Somebody asked me, "What's your favorite Star Wars character?" And I said Chewbacca, and the guy asking me said, "That's impossible. Girls don't like Chewbacca." That's always stuck with me. So, you're not wrong. But as a little girl, I chose Han.
And you weren't allowed to like Chewbacca.
Exactly. I always thought that was the oddest thing. But then that guy outed himself as not really being a Star Wars fan, and he didn't really like the any of the movies. So, we don't have to really consider his opinion.
Not worth considering at all. So like I had said, or I guess I didn't say it here. I've read nearly everything in Star Wars that's been written. And I had mentioned to you that you had written what's generally called Star Wars Legacy Comics Volume 2.
Yes.
And the Volume 2 is important because it was a sequel series to the original Legacy comic series, which ran for 50 issues plus it had I think a 6 issue epilogue. And then your
Yes.
volume two, the epilogue was Legacy War. And then your volume two came after that, but it was designed kind of as its own standalone thing the timeline worked, the circumstances worked, but you didn't need to read the original legacy.
Right.
So how did you end up getting involved in the Star Wars universe in the first place?
You know, really a lot of luck, like just incredibly lucky. I've been in general in my career really lucky to work on things that I really love. And Star Wars was just like, what? I get to contribute to Star Wars? Crazy. But my co-writer, who was also the artist, Gabriel Hardman, and I did a lot of conventions back in the day. And we happened to meet Randy Stradley with Dark Horse. I'm sure people that know Star Wars comics know Randy because
I've met Randy actually a few times. He's a very nice guy.
he's such a nice guy. He's just an incredible editor. He's an incredible person, and I just feel so fortunate to have worked with him. He gave great notes and he had great stories. And, if you went to a convention he was at, sometimes you would get to eat really good sushi on Dark Horse's dime, which was also great.
I did not.
Oh, sorry. Well, I probably shouldn't have mentioned that then. I don't want you to feel left out. But
I
but yeah,
did.
we
Oh, sorry.
oh, sorry. I was just it was just through meeting him at a convention and he liked some of our other work that we had done and ended up saying, "Well, if you have an idea for this, let's hear it." And that's how we got in.
So, random side story about Randy Stradley. Do you know Ryder Wyndham or know of Ryder
Oh,
Wyndham?
yes. Hmm.
So Ryder and Wyndham and I go back quite a number of years. And he had posted, I think it was him, posted online something about if you wore a pith helmet back to Celebration right around the same time, we're talking like 2012, 2013, that Randy Stradley and him would have little certificates for the pith army, I think. And so I ended up buying a pith helmet just for this. And so I have a certificate number one, signed by Randy and oh my brain just completely stopped.
Like it's the afternoon on a Wednesday or something. It's like, I'm
Yeah.
just,
Well, it's signed by both of them, and I've been told that it is not the only number one.
that is a good trick. If you're gonna make somebody feel special, make them feel special.
So yes, apparently I was told it's like, oh, I already made a number one. Yours is also a number one. Oops. It's,
That's fantastic. One of my favorite things I think about still all the time when writing comics is when we started, Randy was telling us that, not every artist is going to want to draw a gazillion, say, stormtroopers or whatever your vision is. And so for some of it, Gabriel drew, but for others, Brian Thies drew the art. But hope that's how I'm saying his name correctly at this late date. But anyways, Randy said that at one point a story had been turned in that said that something like 12 stormtroopers burst through a door. And the artist said, okay. And then he turned in the page and there was one stormtrooper and the door was partially closed. And the artist said, his friends are all outside.
there's 12.
They're out
You
there,
just can't
but
see them from this
can't see them.
perspective.
And that's always stuck with me. Like it was such a funny story, but it always stuck with me that, yeah, don't abuse your artist. Think about what it's going to look like on the page. Like you might have this wonderful thing in your head, but comics are, sort of more of a dialogue between you and the artist. If you're not the artist and the writer, but if you're the writer and you have a separate artist, and then the audience, so you have to get across what you want to get across. But the artist isn't your, drawing robot that will just put down whatever. They're going to have to think about what's needed in the panel, what makes the most sense. They're on deadline. And it was such a funny story that became this like foundational idea of how I write comics. So thank
So
you, Randy.
so I actually have You're the entire run sitting right here. I grabbed them.
Oh,
Like I said, I collect all the books and comics too, so I was able to
no.
grab them. Um, so you wrote there's 18 issues total, and I have a couple questions that may I don't know which ones to go best in order with, but I
Ah,
do want to
okay.
I want to note that when I was looking, like I remembered vaguely because I also do my own timelines. And I'm like, Legacy Volume 2 is like one of the last on the timeline.
It
And
is the last.
when I double checked, it was the last
Yes.
on the timeline. It is 138 years after the Battle of Yavin, which isn't even close to where we are in the Disney canon. So you are by far, if you don't count Visions, which is iffy on the timelines anyway, that you are the furthest one who has ever written after the movies.
Yes. And it's funny. It was actually made it a lot easier to write in a way because we didn't have to fit it like in between something and something. It's way out there. It's just it's almost its own timeline, like you had to take into account everything that went before, of course, but the future was wide open, which was great.
Yeah. And kind of tied to that is that you were literally on the actually you were hanging over the edge of the cancellation of Legends and the change from Dark Horse into Marvel. And because like when I was looking at timing, I'm like the timing wise, oh, because I know April 2014 is when
Yeah.
they specifically said that Legends is done. Everything from here on out is going to be canon, except certain the comic lines that are still in Dark Horse. We'll let them run out, and then everything in Marvel will be canon, but the Dark Horse stuff will still be Legends. Your comic line is one of those comic lines that kept going. And actually, from what I can tell, it is literally the last Dark Horse comic to come out.
It is, which is a weird place to be.
So you have the distinction of being the last Legends writer, minus a few things here and there. I think like Marvel did a 108 from that continued their original line, and so that's technically Legends. But
Yes.
in actuality, like from the main Legends, the main Legends continuity, you are the last one.
Yes, yeah, that's right. The last one and the last in the Dark Horse. Yeah, it's strange. It took us by surprise. I don't think anybody on our level knew that this was coming. I found out via NPR that our run was going to be ending because Disney had taken Star Wars. So it was quite the way to find out. I was on my way to have lunch with a friend, and they said that like on a little NPR promo, Disney to acquire Star Wars. And I immediately thought, oh no, my comics. So
Well, that's why I was wondering because I know writing obviously takes place so much more before the comics released, obviously, but even like you have to have time for the artwork and editing and all of that stuff. Were you still writing the final issues when the news came down to you, at least, even before it probably got released to the public? And
oh
did that
yeah.
affect where you were going with the story?
It did. I mean, we got lucky in a way because we had everything worked out for well, as you said, there were 18 issues. There weren't more than that. So we had it worked out to do a full run of, to finish out another year's worth. Hopefully you can't hear my cat who is yelling in the background because she thinks I'm talking to her.
I
But little squeaks. But yeah, so what we had to do is compress all of that. So they basically told us, okay, the deal isn't completely fine. Like it was final, but the deal wasn't completely um, like, oh, you drop pencils now. Like you can still continue and we'll get the artwork done and we're promised the comic shops that this number will come out, that sort of thing. So we couldn't do the number of issues that we had planned for the story. So we had to rejigger everything and compress the story we wanted to tell into a smaller number of issues, which was very challenging because at that point we had um, like three different factions and there was going to be a like, battle and there was a lot coming. And then we had tentative plans for further issues after that. So we had to say, okay, what can we lop off? Where can we make a satisfying conclusion? But sometimes in these situations, you don't get to do that, and they just cancel it, and you're left with this horrible cliffhanger that will never be resolved. So I feel in the scheme of how that could have gone, got pretty lucky, really.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is like, were you able to take into effect that you were ending, and it wasn't just like in the next issue that's nobody's ever going to see?
Right, exactly, exactly. So we were at least fortunate enough to be able to finish the story, which I feel like I wish we had had more time and room to let it really breathe. There were some things that we wanted to explore that we didn't get to, that kind of thing. But at least it has a conclusion, which,
Yes.
it could be a lot worse.
So let's going into the story itself. Like I said, it follows the original Legacy run, which is known as basically Cade Skywalker, right? Yeah, that's I'm like getting the names. I'm like, I think that's his last name.
Yep, that's right.
It's basically about him. But when Legacy Volume 2 starts, he's nowhere to be seen,
Right.
and we get someone completely new that we've never met before, but is a distant, close relation. I don't know how close, but still I had to be reminded of it. I knew it was a solo child,
Yes.
but it's a great great grandchild of Han and Leia.
And I will actually say that we were never allowed to be explicit about how
How
she's
many
related.
greats? Oh,
Yeah. Or even specifically if. So we had to sign contracts that said, because I think there were plans to explore that in maybe one of the novels that never happened, because there was a lot of other stuff that would have happened if Disney didn't, Disney had their own plans. So they weren't going to follow exactly what Dark Horse had planned or what, whoever else also had the license at the same time. So we were told to never actually say exactly how some of these relationships work. And I actually don't know at this point if I'm still bound by that. So I'm always very cagey because
well, I'm
I'm
just
like,
saying, based on Wikipedia, it said great great grandchild
yes,
of.
that's what they have. And I'm like, okay, Wikipedia, you are always very helpful and sure thing. But I'm like, I am not going to be legal jeopardy to say absolutely because just in case you
That's
ever
why I
send,
was throwing it out. This is what Wikipedia says.
yep,
You don't need to confirm nor deny. It's just
right, right.
this is what we're going.
Close enough. I'm going to say that they always do a good job and they are close enough.
Yeah. So Anya,
Anya, yep.
Anya Solo. How did you did you pick this character, or was this someone that was picked for you to go on your here's your character, run with them?
Yeah, no, it was totally, she was totally our invention. Our marching orders were, it should be a solo. And instead of like, since Cade was a guy, it should be a woman. And we want all new adventures. We want to see people, meet people we haven't met before, and we want to go places we've never gone before. And Randy even said, everybody ends up back on Tatooine. Why? There's nothing there of interest. It's all desert. Go someplace else.
Jakku. Everybody wants to go back to Jakku.
True, true. Yeah, so we took that and ran with it and figured we would make a totally new person and we tried to have her go new places and meet new people.
So that's what I was like. I was trying to refresh myself on the storylines, and even that is kind of hard because you had a lot going on with these stories. And I can see now what you were saying, how you had to compress everything down. I'm like, yeah, I can see that just in these synopses. It's like you had Anya's story, but you also had like the entire galaxies, the government of the galaxy, which was still dealing with the Sith.
Yes.
in essence, and then you also have the the not the military, but the Fells, the
Hmm.
Imperials,
Hmm. Yeah,
the
exactly. Exactly.
which again I'm like the Fells are related to the Solos, so I couldn't remember. I couldn't even find it on like basic synopses. I'm like, did they ever go like, hey, we're cousins?
We were gonna get around to nodding to that a little more, but like I, it's been a long time since I looked back at those, but I think that we kind of went wink wink, but we didn't get to actually explore that more. So it was I do often wish we'd been able to do more with it because I fell in like I love the Star Wars universe and I kind of fell in love with our characters and we had more stories to tell, but you
It's
can't always control that. So
Yeah, no. I had like I had told you, Legacy, the original Legacy is a lot of people's jam. Like I know a lot of people that really love Legacy, and while it was
oh
coming
yeah.
out, I read it as it was coming out, and it reads a lot better compressed as opposed to week to week. It wasn't ever actually my favorite. And then when I get to Legacy Volume 2, I actually really enjoyed it when it was coming out. I'm
Oh,
like,
thank you.
this is I like this a lot better than where we left on the original Legacy. And so when people are saying like, oh, you should meet Corinna, she's a paleontologist and a Star Wars author. I'm like, oh, what did she write? I really liked that comic. Oh, this is
Well,
great.
thank you. I really appreciate that. I mean, we really put a lot of heart into it, I think, and Gabriel's such a huge Star Wars fan too, from well, probably since forever, I guess, like me. And it was really a labor of love. Like we wholeheartedly believed in what we were doing and just tried to make the best Star Wars comics we could.
So, have you worked with Gabriel before? Because I recognize his name. I don't know a lot of the people that work on the comics, unfortunately, like off the
Oh
top of
yeah.
my head. And like I'm like, his name sounds very familiar to me,
Yeah,
though.
he's a comic book artist and does movies, storyboards and stuff too. So
Okay.
like he's around in the entertainment world quite a bit and has we did some Planet of the Apes together and some other stuff. Um, but yeah, the big thing we did was besides that was Green Lantern Earth One.
Okay. So I guess what's your favorite? Because like we said before, you've worked in a lot of different universes. What so far has been your favorite to work in? Not
Oh,
like
God.
not your favorite story you've written, just a favorite universe like to kind of play around with.
It's hard. I do a lot of licensed stuff. I've done some stuff that was my own creation or mine and a co-writer's creation. It's usually whatever I happen to be working on at the time. So, like, it's sort of like when I used to work, I used to be an animal behavior researcher at the zoo. And people would always say, what's your favorite animal? And it would always be whatever I happened to be working with, because that's the one I'd done all the research on right
Yeah.
then. And that's the one I was paying the most attention to. So,
You get the
yeah,
most brain cells fresh on that one.
exactly. So, I mean, all of that said, um, possibly Miss Fury was one of my very favorite. And I don't know if most that's an obscure one. A lot of people don't even
Is
know.
is it is that related to Nick Fury or is this
No,
okay?
no.
So just something different.
She looks like Catwoman, but she was created before Catwoman. She used to be a like a strip, like a newspaper strip.
Okay.
But long, long ago, like one thing she would do is punch Nazis because there were Nazis at the time. And not that there
This is
aren't,
something.
but
This is something that you can never go wrong doing.
exactly so. So these were OG Nazis. Like this was long enough ago that so I did a mini series for 4 issues. It was called The Minor Key for Dynamite several years back. And for whatever reason, she really just struck a chord with me. And I loved working on that book.
That's cool. That's a yeah. Like just like I can't believe the amount of variety that you have in your writing because most people kind of get not like pigeonholed, but that they work best in a certain type of genre. But you like you say sci-fi, but like there's 100 different flavors of sci-fi. Like
There are. There are. I am fortunate that I am not a narrow focus type of nerd. I like a lot of things, so it's helpful.
so yeah, looking just Planet of the Apes versus Alien versus Star Wars, and Star Wars again is its own breed of thing because it's most people like call it science fantasy is
Yes.
kind of the general because it is its own thing. It is the more fantasy aspects because
Yeah.
the science fiction is yeah.
Very true. Very true. And when I've written my own stuff, co-wrote a book called Invisible Republic that is very science fiction, but more grounded. And I
Mhm.
recently had a book come out that's out now in trade called The Space Between, which is about a generation ship, and each chapter is a different generation, a different revolution, a different love affair, and also a little more grounded. So, left to my own devices, I tend to go that direction, or I also write a lot of horror. But Star Wars, I feel like it just doesn't play well with that. It wants to breathe the air, the more free air where you can have crazy creatures that really work best in Star Wars, maybe not anyplace else.
It's its own beast, really.
Exactly, exactly. And it's better for that. Like it's just its own thing, and that's fantastic.
So if you were say you were invited to come back and write again for the Star Wars, and you were allowed to do whatever you wanted, would you try to do something to incorporate the legacy work you had done and bring those characters in somehow, or do something different?
Oh gosh. I would love to revisit them, but I'd probably I might do something different. I with that whole universe to play with, like there's so many stories to be told. And obviously it supports all sorts of different things. Like I loved Andor, and that's a
Oh yeah.
very different type of story, but I also have loved a lot of the other recent things. And they're all just a little different. Some go more fantasy, some like, westerns. It's amazing how it can absorb these things and still remain Star Wars. Like the flexibility is amazing.
Yeah, the acolyte to Andor to I was gonna say Stranger Things. So
Oh,
the kids one.
yes.
Oh, that name's also escaping me at the moment, but they're
Oh,
very
the more recent one,
yes.
now that you haven't thought of it, I'm gonna be like, what? Yes, stealing the ship, watched all of them. Oh my gosh. It's been such a day today.
That's just my brain doesn't want a brain anymore. Skeleton Crew. That's it. Thank
Thank
you.
you. I was going
Thank you, Internet.
skeleton.
Um, but those are such different shows. They're such different like genres that all happen to fit. So where would you want to slot yourself into?
Oh gosh. I mean, I absolutely loved Andor. Like I really loved it. So probably something a little more grounded like that. Maybe not something quite so political thriller. Maybe something a little more about repercussions of something that happened on a group of people that was, well, I guess that is a little, I'm sort of describing our legacy run. Like a woman who just works on a junk planet and gets caught up in something is exactly my speed, and makes sense because that's what we wrote.
That's I was well I was trying to find like summaries of the comics. This is I found a entire article about the comics and how they're like how will this relate to the Force Awakens? And it's like we know they're two different universes, but it's like this seems like this Rey character before the Force Awakens came out. This Rey character is a lot like Anya Solo here in the comic series, and I'm like, I can see that.
We got so much of that. Like people asked us so much, like, oh, did they talk to you? They didn't need to talk to us. They had the books. But
Yeah,
I mean,
they can read.
yeah, exactly. The books exist, but I mean, I'm not saying it's based on that or anything, but a lot of people made that connection, and maybe it's just a natural place for Star Wars to go. I mean, Star Wars is great about having people that seem to be, somebody that isn't a big deal and living someplace that doesn't matter, become the most important person. So that's sort of what Star Wars is all about.
Well, then Anya was more important than she wanted to be. It was
Yes.
that's kind of the I guess that is also a trope in Star Wars. Is like you have the people who aren't important that want to be important. You
Right.
have the people who aren't important that want to stay unimportant, and you have the people who are important who don't want to be important.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And she kind of felt like because she knew her history. Like
We were gonna get there. Like she would like to kind of play dumb, like, oh, but yeah, she knew. She was more clued into a lot of things than she was letting on.
so how do you go about crafting your storylines?
You know, I've refined it over the years, but usually what I do is if it's somebody else's universe. Like when it's my own, it's a little bit of a different process. But if it's The Expanse or Avatar or whatever, I do a lot of research. I try to immerse myself in the feeling of it. And we talked about this a lot when we were writing Star Wars Legacy too. We wanted it to feel like Star Wars because even if you're not going any of the normal places or have any of the normal characters, we felt like the most important thing is how it makes you feel. And when you think about Star Wars, I think a lot of people get a feeling before they even get an image or a particular character. Like that's at least always been my like if you say Star Trek and you say Star Wars, they feel totally different. So that's usually what I try to do. I try to immerse myself in that and then from that, whatever that feeling is, see if an idea bubbles up. And then I'll chase that down and see if that can become a story, if it can be load bearing enough to support an arc or even an issue, depending on what the marching orders are, if it needs to be an arc. And from there, I usually do the pitch because whoever's at the other end, like, for instance, I have done some work for Disney. I wrote some Aladdin stories back in the day, and they all had to go past my editor, an editor at Disney, and the vice president of princesses at Disney. So there was somebody there whose whole job was to make sure the princesses came off correctly. I don't know, but
That is a job title that I don't think I have ever
no,
even imagined existed.
I was surprised. But apparently, every company has different things that they value and that they absolutely have to protect. So usually then I craft it. I have a pitch where I talk about the storyline and how the thing will work and which characters will be important. Send that off for review. And then if that gets okayed, I start figuring out, okay, how to break it down because comics being such a particular beast, you can think about the three act structure, but often it's a four-issue run, so things don't quite line up because you also have to think about eventually it'll hopefully come out as a trade, which people maybe read in one sitting. So the rise and fall of the action is very important. So basically, that's how I do it. I start really big with the feeling, come down to the story, come down to the outline of the story, and then start coming down to what goes in an issue. And then from there, what goes on a page. And then from there, how the panels will shake out and who will talk where and that kind of thing. So it doesn't sound very organic. There's a lot of outlining, but I'm also not super good about writing down every single beat because often when I'm in it, in the actual scripting, the characters will be like, well, I wouldn't say that. I want to say something else. And they'll tell me, no, I don't want to go look over there. I want to go look over here. So I have to leave myself enough room to allow the characters to move in ways that feels natural to them at the time.
How much background did you get into before you started even like writing this? Because like we said, you were at the literal tail end of 30 at that point, yeah, 30 plus years of Star Wars continuity. Obviously, I'm going to assume you didn't read and watch everything that was out.
No, I would have liked to, time allowing, I would have loved to. But being that I have a day job as well as my writing job, sometimes that doesn't happen. I try to be as thorough as I can with research. Like I really, really try. I definitely read every single one of the comics that I could get a hold of. There were some gaps, but I read all of those. I could not, I just, for time, I could not read like every single novel or play every single game, but I did watch everything that was available at the time. There weren't as many, of course, now with Disney, like there's so many different iterations of series and many more movies, but at the time there weren't quite that many. So we did watch the movies over and over again. And we went back and looked at a lot of the original things that George Lucas had looked at because we figured, where did he get the feeling for Star Wars? Well, obviously, it was from the samurai movies and the Westerns. And we did a lot of research into what he had been watching and reading and then picked up those as well.
Yeah, and obviously, like legacy comics, you would have read all of because that
Oh, yes.
your storyline is so heavily dependent on the legacy before it. And then as you go further back in time, it's less and less directly tied. So you don't really need to know every nitty bitty detail as well.
And that's where having a good editorial team can be invaluable because sometimes a weird question would come up and you'd be like, wait, has there ever been another instance of this particular creature, or does a creature already exist that could fit this role? Am I being dumb and I'm just not thinking of it? And then, but Randy was like an encyclopedia. He knew everything. So we could just ask questions. And there were a couple of things that we weren't allowed to use, like that Lucasfilm was just like, don't touch that. That's not for you. You cannot have a force ghost. Like that was one thing that they told us. Nope, can't do it. Don't do it. Don't use Yoda and no iteration of Yoda. Because at the time, of course, we didn't have Grogu and all of that. But they said, don't go anywhere near that. Don't go anywhere near anything that deals with this kind of spirituality. Just don't touch it. Okay.
It's interesting. They did like just Lucasfilm in general seemed to shut down Force Ghosts very, very quickly.
Hard and fast. It was one of the only rules that we had. There were just a couple going in, but that was one of them.
But like if you like read the stories and the comics, like I know Tim Zahn's books, which were like one of the first ones really to come out,
Yes.
they didn't have any Force Ghosts. And then they in the later book that takes place before them, there was a brief interaction with Luke, if I remember correctly, where Obi-Wan Force Ghost is just like, peace out, I'm gone. And it was like basically it. And it's like he's like, you're not going to see me anymore. I'm like, wait, so this is just, I didn't realize that Lucasfilm was the ones that put the kiboshes on that
That was my
entirely.
understanding. I mean, this, of course, was filtered through multiple levels of editorial and stuff, and it could just be that everybody blamed each other. I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, we were told in no uncertain terms, whatever you do, don't do that. So, of course, then any ideas that you had in that direction, okay, I'm not pursuing that one. I've got to pursue this other one. So I don't think we had any ideas with Force Ghosts, but um, of course, then when somebody tells you no, that's all you can think of. So,
I have a whole family of Force Ghosts. What am
right,
I supposed? You want me just to kill off this poor family?
right, exactly. That just makes more ghosts. Oh my gosh.
Where so I don't know if you're allowed to talk about it. Were there any ideas that you came up with? Because you had mentioned a couple things that you came up with that they put the kiboshes on it. Are you allowed to talk about them at all, or prefer not to?
Well, yeah, I don't know if I can. I usually don't just for safety's sake, although it's been a really long time now and I don't know that anybody would care to. But yeah, a couple of things just the one main one was that we wanted to have a romance eventually between two of the characters who were best friends and they said absolutely not, one's a human, one's a fish. No.
That seems kind of weird because we've had a lot of cross-species relationships in Star Wars, both before and after.
Yeah, I always wondered who that came from because I was like, is that just somebody who's icked out by the idea of hugging a fish? I don't know.
I don't know, because we have the romance in the X-Wing comics between the Mon Calamari and the I want to call him a squid face. I don't I know that like that's not right. Um the
Well, I wonder
Quarren.
though, but because those were neither of those was you know,
Human?
yeah, and a solo in particular because they were just like I was like, oh, they're best friends. It's natural as they adventure. I'd love to explore this cross-species romance, and they were like, no way. They can be
Interesting.
friends, but no romance.
I don't know. We got Kanan and Hera eventually, so I, no, that was after this time. I'm like trying to think of like, but that was about the same time. No, it was
That was
after.
after, but still, I always was kind of like, oh well, but so we had to figure out a different path for that, which was fine. I mean, then you get to have them just be best friends, which is also, I think, really fun. But um, yeah, no budding romance.
Well, it was in their hearts.
Exactly.
Their
They
little
always appreciate each other. So
little fishy heart. So I don't want to keep you too long. Um, can you talk to me about some of your what you're currently working on? What's recently come out? You said that you have your own personal book that just came out. You said.
yeah, it's actually well, I guess now, gosh, time. What is as previous? What is time? What is space? But my book, The Space Between, from Boom Comics,
Okay.
with Danny Luckert, is the artist on that, and that's the one about the generation ship, and it is out in trade and wherever fine comic books are sold. But also at the end of this month, Blood Type is dropping, and that is a EC imprint from Oni Comics. EC are the horror comics that were eventually shut down by censorship way back in the day, from the whole comics code and everything. But they resurrected them, and I've done a ton of shorts for the new line of anthologies. I've done, I think, 12, yeah, maybe 12 now in the various different books they have of that. But one of them spun off into this story called Blood Type, and it was a four-issue miniseries that will now be a trade. It's about a vampire who ends up on a tropical island.
That sounds like interesting. I'm
It
not
was
not a scenario I would put together.
it was so much fun to write. I'm originally from Florida, so and I come from a tourist town where we just lived there, so we'd see like all the ugly, dark parts. But for people who were on vacation, it was happy, fun time all the time. And what better way to explore that than with a vampire? And as a bonus, a bunch of billionaires get eaten. So
That's punching Nazis and eating billionaires. There's it's
if I
right
could
up
have a
my
brand,
alley.
I would hope that would be it.
Yeah, I have not heard of EC Comics.
DC, yep. Yeah, it was.
I assume they're one of the smaller comic
Well, it
brands.
actually Mad Magazine came out of that.
Oh, okay. I have
Yeah,
heard of them.
yes. But yeah, horror aficionados are very into this resurgence. And I do write a lot of horror as well as sci-fi and fantasy stuff. So,
That is definitely a genre that is not for me. So
oh,
I
can admire it from afar, perhaps. And well, maybe something that would straddle a little better is I'm currently writing Sabrina, the Teenage Witch for
yes.
Archie, and which is also going to be put out by Oni. And that's the first issue will drop in October, just in time for Halloween.
Oh, nice. So
Yeah.
that seems like that's something you're currently like actively because October is enough time that you would be getting the artwork set like at this point.
Absolutely. I'm actually working on issue 2 right now. Issue 1 has is getting the treatment by the artist right now. So hopefully I'll see some art from that soon. And yeah, we work way ahead. You know how publishing is. You
Especially
gotta
with
keep ahead.
publishing in like books is very different than publishing in comics because you're right because
Very.
the artists apparently need time to art.
Yeah, funny how that goes. And then the colorists want time, and the letterer wants time, and all of these people want time. And go figure. And me as the writer, the first one in the pipeline, sort of, if I'm late, basically everybody can be mad at me because it'll be my fault.
And by the time it comes out, it will have been so long since you've done it that it'll be new again.
Yeah, when I get to read them after they come out, I get to almost be like, "Oh, this was a fun book," and I'm like, "Wait, I read."
Who wrote this? This is great.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
Or,
much
oh
better
no.
than, yeah, that's usually my opinion of my writing. Who wrote this? Oh, it was me.
Oh, only myself to blame, exactly.
So how can people follow you online or get in contact with you if you want them to?
Yeah, absolutely. Corinna Bechko. So my name at every place I am. I am no longer on Twitter because the too many Nazis to be.
Ran
But
out of energy of
yes,
punching
exactly. I
energy.
got tired. So I am on Blue Sky, Instagram. I have a website. I don't keep it updated as well as I should, but maybe eventually I will. You never know. Mostly Instagram and Blue Sky. And of course, in the comic books.
Definitely in the comic books. So you can find us on all the socials, except for that same one. You can find us on our website, talkintauntauns.com. You can email us, contact at talkintauntauns.com, or hit the little contact button on the website. You can leave us a 5-star review wherever good, bad, or indifferent reviews are left. And the most important thing you can do to help the show is to share the show with a friend, or an enemy, or a pet, or a vampire stuck on a desert island.
Her most of all.
So, and with that, we'll see you next time.